Welcome back to my channel. Today let's discuss why does it seem, or why is it that military rule is taking more or having more popularity in the African continent. In most African countries, most governments are being overturned through military coup. From 1990s up until 2020, democracy seemed to be taking deeper roots in African government, in African system of government. For many years, it seems like most African countries, in fact, Africa in general, was moving past the era of military coup. From at least there were frequent elections, even though there were irregularities. Also, there were regional blocs like ECOWAS, AU, making policies or enforcing anti-coup policies. Military coup were rare. Only a handful occur in maybe once in a decade. We see countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Guinea, Gabon, now Sudan, and most other African countries, even some that have attempted coups just between the space of 2020 to 2024, or 2025. So one could but wonder, why the military takeovers? Why the military comeback? Is democracy no longer working in African countries or in African continent? Here is what is happening. The rate of corruption in most African governments who have stayed in power for many, many years, changing constitutions to favor them and to extend their rule. But also, military knows that real power belongs to the military, even though it receives command from the democratic leader. So ultimately forcing the military to step in claim to fix a system that is, or the government of the day that is not working in their countries. So another reason or factor for military popularity in most African countries is a glaring fact that most African countries does not have security. The security problem is so glaring, so clear that even the terrorists are having, a fair share with the government of the day, leaving the people with the feeling that the government does not do enough to protect them, which in most cases is true. So sometimes you see, since the military provide rapid response to the security problems, people unconditionally welcome the military group. Without any doubt, we know that countries like China, the US, France have their different interests in Africa. But with the military takeover so far, most of these Western influences have been reduced. So these countries' influence in Africa has also contributed deeply to the reason why the military takeovers are happening in Africa. So the next factor that could be considered to have fueled military takeovers in African countries is the economic frustration that has eaten deep. And many people feel helpless. And when the military steps in and say, give us a chance, we can fix things, we can change it, we can bring stability, people open their arms wide because everybody wants safety and security and economic prosperity. And seriously, do you know that many young people are shaping these transitions and supporting the military government? Considering that Africa has the youngest populations that are outspoken and also tired of the old heads, old government systems, even though we see a caricature of election made recently in Cameroon, many African countries has been witnessing the military takeovers instead of the normal elections, even though it's frowned upon by many Western countries that these countries in Africa are operating as or functioning under military government. Many African country leaders or people, stakeholders don't want to ask these questions. Why the comeback of military rule? But the question still remains, why are military takeovers or military coups suddenly winning in African countries? And why are people, civilians, suddenly supporting soldiers over elected presidents? But let me know what you think. Do you